Hi, welcome to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name is Matt Lehman, and on this stream we work on Python code and Django applications, web applications. So we'll be doing more of that this evening. We'll work through a Python exercise to teach you some Python basics, and then we're going to dig into my Django web app that is actually running live, and we're going to start adding a new feature to it in order to improve what capabilities it has for my users. So we've been working through a website called Exercism, and this is a site that teaches you how to do lots of programming languages, and we've been walking through different Python exercises that are available here. And it provides some tools to like run some tests and have a kind of a story that you can work from to give you something interesting to work through, and it teaches concepts along the way. So we're going to continue on that path. Here's the generic exercise track, but we've been working through a syllabus of stuff, and we're going to come to the bottom where we only have a couple things left. And this evening, we're doing one with unpacking and multiple assignments. So let's click on this and see where it takes us. So this is about lists, tuples, and dictionaries, and how to do unpacking of multiple variables and some functions that we can use. I'm not going to read through this information here because I'm aware of this stuff, but you're welcome to if you try out Exercism on your own. So let's go to the exercise, Locomotive Engineer, and it looks like I am not logged in, so let me log in with GitHub. There we go. So now I can copy the exercise and get it locally on my own terminal setup with a local set of code, and that lets me work with the tools that I care about. There's also an online editor if you want to use their experience, but my recommendation is if you do something like this is to get your own editor set up for your project because it will enable you to have future projects and have your tools ready to go rather than being reliant on some web editor. But the web editor is kind of there in a pinch if you need it. So let's start by downloading the exercise. And it's going to put us in this Exercism directory. My computer also restarted, so I got to do a little bit of setup to get where we need to go. So we want to go to Locomotive Engineer, and I'm going to start NeoVim. Now, I need to get a file that pertains to all of these. There's a bunch of extra information that comes out from the exercise as you run the tests. And this little file makes sure that those extra bits of information aren't this printed out. So I've been adding this to all the tests. I wish they would just fix this on all the exercises, but it's a small thing to do. So we're going to open up this code file, and I realized I also did not start my virtual environment for this that actually has the test. So let's do that. And we'll go back into that area and get this for real. Okay, now we should be ready to go with the actual skeleton of the assignment, the exercise. That is where we're going to implement our stuff, and then we can go through each step. Each step in the exercise usually has one function associated with it, at least so far in the exercises we've done for Python. So let's look through here, go through the instructions, and see what we're doing. Okay, it says, your friend Linus is a locomotive engineer who drives cargo trains between cities. Although they are amazing at handling trains, they are not amazing at handling logistics or computers. They would like to enlist your programming help organizing train details and correcting mistakes in route data. So it says this exercise could easily be solved using slicing, indexing, or various dict methods. However, we would like you to practice packing, unpacking, and multiple assignment in solving each of the tasks below. Okay, so let's keep that in mind as we're doing this. Your friend has been keeping track of wagon identifiers, IDs, but they are never sure how many wagons the system is going to have to process at any given time. It would be much easier for the rest of the logistics team, easier for the rest of the logistics program to have this data packed into a unified list. Implement a function, getList of wagons, that accepts an arbitrary number of wagon IDs. Each ID will be a positive integer. The function should return the given IDs as a single list. So this is our list. It doesn't say anything about removing duplicates or anything, so I think we have everything that we need. So this function is called getListOfWagons. And right now that's not going to pass. We could run the file that is the tests. We'll keep those up side by side. So we'll have our two files to work from. And we can run the test, and you can see that it doesn't work. So here is, at the bottom here, getListOfWagons test, which is expecting to be able to receive a bunch of arguments of any number, but it's only accepting 0 right now because that's the stub implementation. You can see that over here. There's no parameters defined, so it can't actually accept that. And we can run that individual test by just running it here from this file. So we can narrow it down to just the part that we're trying to solve for this piece. So let's do this. How are we going to do this? So we have the need to have an arbitrary number of arguments. And one way to do that is with a star operator. So this is effectively saying that you can have a positional list of arguments, and it will group them all into this wagons field. So it'll treat that as a list. Or it might be a tuple. So what we need to do, though, is we need to return a list of those values. So the solution to this problem is to take this and return a list of wagons. So that essentially took all of the input parameters, or any arguments that are passed in this call, and it put them in this variable and returns it as a list. We run our test. We now see that all of the test cases pass, so it can accept any number of arguments, any number of wagons. Okay, that one was a pretty light exercise. Let's move to the next one. We need to fix the list of wagons. At this point, you are starting to get a feel for the data and how it's used in the logistics program. The ID system always assigns the locomotive an ID of 1, with the remainder of the wagons in the train randomly assigned a chosen ID greater than 1. Was that the case? Yep. Okay. So the engine, basically, the first car in a train, is ID 1. Your friend had to connect 2 new wagons to the train and forgot to update the system. Now the first 2 wagons in the train list have to be moved to the end, or everything will be out of order. To make matters more complicated, your friend just uncovered a second list that appears to contain missing wagon IDs. All they can remember is that once the new wagons are moved, the IDs from the second list should be placed directly after the designated locomotive. Linus would be really grateful to you for fixing their mistakes and consolidating the data. Okay, this is a confusing statement to me, but let's dig in the example in a second. We're going to implement a function, fix list of wagons, that takes 2 lists containing wagon IDs. Okay. It should reposition the first 2 items of the first list to the end and insert the values from the second list behind on the right-hand side of the locomotive ID. Let me read that one more time because it's confusingly wording to me as I'm reading it out loud. It should reposition the first 2 items of the first list to the end. Okay, got that. And then insert the values from the second list behind, on the right-hand side, locomotive ID 1. Okay, so you're taking these 2 values, 2 and 5, you're putting them after 13, and notice that 1 is in here. We don't have to insert 1. That should be, we'll assume that they're always going to give us the right data format. So then we need to, from the first element, like insert something in between the first element that is this list of stuff. So that we get this little sequence here, and then that's there. All right, that's an odd thing to do. Now, interestingly, I think the more natural solution is to do this with slicing. So it's it's fascinating they're saying to pack and unpack and do multiple assignment to make this work. I'll try and do that. Try and do my best to do that, but it feels weird. Trying to think of like how to unpack that list to pop off the first two elements. All right, so let's try it out. So we need to take. So we can use some list methods here that would help. And there are some slow methods that we could apply. Let's look at the built-in types again. We looked at this last time for sets. We want to look at them for lists. There should be list in here somewhere. Oh, come on. List. So here are operations. John, welcome. Working through another Python exercise. This one's about unpacking and packing. Good to see you again. So the question is, which list operations should we use to do this? We know that we need to take, this is the one that has the things that we need to reorder, and then this is the one that has to be inserted. So the question becomes, how do we do this without indexing? So there's one option would be to pop, but a pop on a list is actually not what we want. So if we look, let's see if we can find it. Oops, that's the wrong window. See if we can find it on this list of methods. There we go. So a list in Python is considered a mutable sequence. So when you see this thing that says mutable sequence types, it's referring to a list among other things. And I don't know why they don't call that out. That should be pretty obvious here, but it's not. So one thing we can do is we could, I don't like this, but we could, if we wanted to use just pop, we could reverse the list and then pop off the items. That's going to be slow. What else could we do? See, here's a bunch of indexing operations. So the more natural way to do a lot of these things that they're talking about is using slices. So it's a weird exercise to me to like want to see it done this way. So I think what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take this each wagon's ID, and I'm going to do an in-place reversal on it. So there are two ways that you can do reversing in Python. You could either call reversed on a list object, like so, and that would return a new list as a copy that it has all the items reversed. It might even be an iterator. I don't remember exactly if it's an iterator or an actual list. But in this case, we want to be able to get the items off of this actual list. So I want to try and do each wagons, and I want to call reverse on it. And that should give us this new list where we can pop off the items that are on there. Because there's no other way, there's no real good way, I think, to, short of, well, I take that back. There are other ways. We can talk through those in a minute, to get the first and second items off the list. So we can reverse that, and then we can say first wagon is now each wagon ID'd up, and then we pop. And the second wagon is now each wagon, and we pop again. Again, this feels super weird. I don't actually like this code, but I'm trying to adhere to the spirit of the exercise. Okay, so now we have something that's close. It's more like the first extra wagon. This is the mistake, right? That's what they said in the exercise. So we want those two things to be at the end by the time we're all done. So we could then say, we could go one more, and say, I'm going to call it the engine because that's what feels natural to me for a train. So each wagon IDs dot pop should be 1. And now what's left with this each wagon IDs is all of those cars are pulled off, and then we can do another reverse on it to put it back. And then finally, we could sequence all these parts in this kind of weird way where we say, how would I do this? Engine. So that's an item. And then I'm just going to add them as a bunch of lists. So I don't like this, but I'm going to do it anyway. So the missing wagons would go here, which we're assuming is a list as well. And then we could put the each wagons back after it, and then we add on the first and second wagon. Why not del? Good question. Let me think on that for a minute. Or let me get a solution here, John, and then we'll come back to other ways to do it, because I'm not feeling great about what's here. So first extra wagon, and let's do one more. Nope, I'm being really dumb. Second extra wagon. Okay. I think this should work. Let's see if it works. And it did. Okay. So that's weird. Let's see. Could we do this with del? Del removes an element. Does it give it back? Does it? And I can't. That's the part I can't remember. Or is that what pop does? This is where my memory of other stuff in Python is failing me at the moment. Let's make sure we're on the same version of Python. And let's bring up the REPL and have our list of 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, if I do, let's see, let's call it item and do a del on list of 0. Does that put 1 in the item spot? What? Invalid syntax. I think that might be my answer right there. If del doesn't have an assignment option. Yeah, there we go. So I think the problem with, unless you were thinking somewhere else, John, for where to use del, I think the challenge would be that if I did del on those items, I would lose the value, and so I couldn't use them. So I have got to have some way to get the value back. Okay, there are other options if we wanted to do this. What else could we do? So let me think for a moment on which one's worth presenting. I mean, other kind of kludgy ways to do this would be, we know that we want the index on the first and second thing. So rather than popping, we could do a combination that is like first extra wagon is equal to each, and this is assuming you didn't reverse it. You could do this and get the items this way, and then do each wagon ID and then remove first extra wagon. So that's kind of like pulling the value out and then doing a removal on it. So you're guaranteed that it will be in there because you just got it. So you, assuming the list is not empty, this would work. But that feels sort of strange. But it does eliminate the need to do the reverse. Other possibilities that we could consider would be what? There is something. Where is it? Is it in collections? I think it's in collections. There's a data structure called a deck, a It looks like DQ, but it's supposed to be pronounced deck, I believe. And it makes, and it's the reason it stands for a doubly ended queue. Oh, there it is, right there. Read the documentation out loud, and it answers the question. Answer for everything. Decks are a generalization of stacks and queues. The name is pronounced deck and is short for double-ended queue. So with a deck, you can pass in that list that we had from the beginning, and then you could say pop left, which will remove an item from the left side, which is the side we wanted it on. Is that worth it to bring in an extra import to do that? I don't know. Probably not. I'm not really sure what the deck does internally. There's probably some cost of building it. So this was a reasonable way to go about getting this, is to reverse it and then pop the stuff off. Are there other ways that we can unpack? Maybe there are. What if we did, now I'm curious. Can you do, let's bring it back up the REPL. Let's do our list of, this might be the better way if it works. I suspect you can do, well, I don't want to speak to it until we actually see it. So we'll say first, second, and sorry for the single variable names, and then we'll do star rest. We'll do L. So now we've got first, aha, that was what we should have done. Yep, okay. That's a way better solution than what I've got here. So this worked, but yuck. Instead, we can not reverse it, and we can do, we'll keep first extra wagon, we'll keep the variable names even though they're kind of long, and the remainder, I'll just call them others. And we use we're using the star operator, basically saying, like, when you're unpacking, put everything into a single variable. We give each wagon IDs. Well, I suppose we did the engine as well. So we'll do we know that the engine is the third item on there. And now we've got, we don't need to have this reverse. Well, let's comment this out in case of my implementation is wrong. Still the engine, and then we can say, now we should be able to say others. Whoops. Others should be a list. And that should still, nope, sad. No, it worked. I just ran too many tests. Okay. So we went from all of this nonsense of doing pop many times and did it and reverse a couple times and got it out in one go. Okay, so that, and just to keep the solution a little bit cleaner, let's drop these down to shorter names. All right, I'm trying to think if there are other ways that we could pack this back into a list. I'm guessing there are, because it's sort of wasteful to construct a list here and then just to add it to another list. But I'm drawing a blank on what would be the ideal way to put this first. Because again, it's the same problem of, if I wanted to prepend it to a missing wagons, can I do that with the built-in types? There's not really, well, if I did this style here with insert, then this is the other, what they don't tell you about insert is that, especially if it's at the beginning, the first element, it copies everything down the line and doesn't do that the most efficient way. That's why you would use a deck. So an insert into what you know is going to be the first position on a list is probably not the way to go if it was a gigantic list. For this little small example, it's not a big deal. but it's not exactly something I want to be doing on a regular basis, especially if I know it's going early in the list. There's overhead to that. So I'm going to stick with this. I'm going to be interested to see if there are commuting solutions that did this in a cleaner way, but this feels decent as a 2-line solution. All right, let's move on to the next one. Now that all the wagon data is correct, Linus would like you to update the system's routing information. Along a transport route, a train might make stops at a few different stations to pick up and or drop off cargo. Each journey could have a different amount of these intermediary delivery points. Your friend would like you to update the system routing dict with any missing additional delivery information. Implement a function called add missing stops. That's our next one. That accepts a dictionary followed by a variable number of keyword arguments. These arguments could be in the form of a dictionary holding one or more stops, or any number of stop number city keyword pairs. Oh wow. Okay. Your function should then return the routing dictionary updated with an additional key that holds a list of all the added stops in order. Okay. So we're essentially adding. Okay, I got it. Okay. So they're assuming that, I guess there's an assumption. I'm going to make some assumptions that if we get a stop 1, we are not going to get, and then also get a stop 5, that we're also going to get all the numbers in between. Stop 2, stop 3, stop 4. That we wouldn't get something out of, or missing a portion of the sequence. It seemed to indicate, I thought it was going to indicate there's another way to, the arguments could be in the form of a dictionary holding one or more stops. Oh, okay. All right. So this is an example where they want us to use keyword arguments. So we know that the first argument is the route that has the from and the to. We'll call this the route, and we'll continue to accept that as a positional argument. Oh, and then they tell us. First one, they tell us what it should be called. They didn't put the thing in there. That's interesting. That is not defined. And then we want to say do a double star, and I don't know if this has a true name, if it's splat, or there are other names depending on the language about how you slurp up that information, basically. So all the keyword arguments will be stored in a dictionary that it goes with whatever name you give it. So I'm going to call it stops. So the keys of stops will be what's on the left-hand side of the equal sign, and the values will be on what's on the right. And we want to, what can we do? We can assume, I'm going to assume that they're all in the same format. Also, I'm going to assume that, well, is it safe to assume that we can do string sorting here? Like, are these, this might break if we had 14 stops, because if we did a string sort and then it's I think that's called a lexicographical sort, then you would have stop 1, and instead of stop 2 being the next one in the sequence, it would be stop 10, because it's based on string values, and so that would fail. Let's see. Their sample data doesn't seem to go that high, but I think we can rely on the sort order of the strings as they are presented. So this thing will fail though if there's too many stops. So all we need for our output is a list of stops, and so we will do that as well, I think we need to even do this as a comprehension. Let's see. And then I think I'll call this stop order, maybe, because I want to use, you'll see. I'm going to rename that for that purpose. So I want stops, and I want this to be a list, and it's going to be the value, which I'll give it an actual meaningful name. It's supposed to be a city, and it'll be the city for the key with the city is the value in a sorted on stop order items. So the items will give us pairs of things, and when you call sorted on a tuple, I believe it does it on, at least for dictionaries, it does it on the first element. So doing this should give us a list of cities. And then we should be able to take this and add it as with a key of stops to the result. So then we say route, or actually I guess we can even do that without assigning it. Let's just do it directly. Route of stops and return the route. And this is unused, so we could give it a little underscore to kind of hint that it's not used. Okay, let's see if we passed. All right, cool. So again, this would have failed had our data set in this test been larger than this many stops. If it was 11 or anything higher than 9, it would have failed. But it's okay for the way we did this. Let's look at the next bit here. We're going to extend the routing information. Linus has been working on the routing program and has noticed that certain routes are missing some important details. Initial route information has been constructed as a dictionary, and your friend would like you to update that dictionary with whatever might be missing. Every route in the system requires slightly different details, so Linus would really prefer a generic solution. So no hard coding stuff is what they're saying. Implement a function called extend route information that accepts 2 dictionaries. The first dictionary contains the origin and destination cities that the train route runs between. The second dictionary contains other route details, such as train speed, length, or temperature. The function should return a consolidated dictionary with all routing information. The second dictionary contains different or more properties than the one in the example. Okay, so we've got at least this much stuff, and we could have this much stuff. So the question is, are there going to be conflicts between them? Like if you have 2 keys that are there, what will happen? So I'm really curious, can we just add these together? That would be the simple way. We haven't returned anything yet. So what if we just do return route plus more route information? Will that work? Oh, you can't actually add dictionaries that way? Unsupported operand. I thought you could. All right, I was wrong. So another way we could do this is with a dictionary comprehension. But again, I don't know if this is going to be like we have to merge the values. So let's look at the types here. We've got the dictionary type. There's copy. Create a new dictionary with keys from the iterable and set values to value. No, that's not what we want. Pop item, reversed, set default. Oh, update. That's what we want. Update the dictionary with the key value pairs from other, overwriting existing keys. I think that's what we want. Because again, I'm not sure if the override is good or bad. Update's a good method to be aware of. Can't believe I wasn't thinking of that. Nope. Okay. Well, so what failed? Oh. Update does, yeah, I always forget this. Update does not return the dictionary modified. It's an in-place thing. So then we need, so effectively what we're doing just then, I think it returns none. So we were saying return on the none, but really we want to return the updated dictionary. All right, cool. So they didn't do this. They could have been sneaky and said, like, we expect you to merge keys together. So if you have one of these keys as a list, you must extend it, but that would have been a really tricky thing to convey. All right. Oh, we're at the last piece of this assignment. Cool. We need to fix the wagon depot. So when Linus was surveying the wagon depot, they noticed the wagons were not getting stored in the correct order. In addition to an ID, each wagon has a color that corresponds to the type of cargo it carries. Wagons are stored in the depot in grids, where each column in the grid has wagons of the same color. Oh, goodness. However, the logistics system shows lists of wagons to be stored in the depot have their rows grouped by color. Okay. But for the storage grid to work correctly, each row should have 3 different colors so that the columns align by color. Oh my word, my head's kind of spinning with all these weird details. Your friend would like you to sort out the wagon depot lists so that the wagons get stored correctly. Okay. Implement a function called fixWagonDepot that accepts a list of 3 items. Okay, so it's fixed to 3. That's good to know. Each list item is a sublist or a row that contains 3 tuples. Each tuple is a wagon ID followed by a wagon color. Your function should return a list with 3 row lists reordered to have the wagons swapped into their correct positions. All right, so what do we got here? We essentially have a transpose, right? This is a oh, that's a good question. Sorry, John, I didn't see your comment there. Could append have been used in the last example? I presume you're talking about this instead of doing an update. Yeah, the other solution that I had in my head before I was considering an update was something like, I think we could even have done this with a dictionary comprehension. So we could have said for, or maybe not dictionary comprehension. Maybe we would have wanted to, could have abused a list comprehension, and we could have said list comprehension. Oh, no, that's not right. I was thinking of like iterating over this and adding any key to the dictionary directly, the route dictionary, from the more route information. So for key value in more route information dot items, and then do route key equal value. That was what I was thinking of. I'm not sure what you meant by append in your example there, John. Maybe there's more to that comment that you had a different thought. So I think effectively update does this, and by doing this, it's going to have the natural consequence that if the key is already in the dictionary, it's going to overwrite it with the value. So I think that's what it's like. I think that's what update's doing under the covers. Although it might be doing it a little bit faster. It might be able to do that in C rather than in straight Python. Okay. So this is a thing that is going to effectively mirror all of these. or transpose it over a dimension. There's probably some good math way to do this very quickly, but I'm drawing a blank on what that would be. What math operation? I've not done set math and that kind of stuff in a long time. Or this is not set math. What are the matrix math in a while? So, but it feels like you're taking your x's and you're turning them into y's, kind of horizontal to vertical. But we can do this. And it probably could work with an arbitrary number of items as well. But we don't have to do it that way. So we know that our list is going to be a list of lists. So for a row in the wagon rows, we know that we want that much. And so this is where it's horizontal, and we need it to be placed in a different spot. I'm not saying that very well. We need to have what? We could. It's just, the first way to do this is like we could have something that will append a row. No. Hold on. Let me write down some more stuff. So what I'm listing here is a wagon is an item is a tuple that is one of those 2 element things. And so I'm going to call our return structure transposed. So we want to populate this transposed thing with new stuff. And we know that for every item in the first row, we need to create new lists for each item in there. So if it was like 4 long horizontally, although they tell us it's only going to be 3, but if it was 4, we would want 4 lists inserted into transposed. So how would we do that in a first pass? One way we could do this is like pre-populate transposed with the length of a row. So that might be what I want to do actually. So I'm going to do it in a stupid way first and see if there's a more elegant way in my head afterwards. So don't really care how many times, or I don't care about the value. Range on the length of wagon rows at the first element. So that's going to take a row, look at the list length, so it should be 3, right? And then go iterate over that, and then we can say transposed.append, and then we can put an empty list in there. Essentially, that will, whoops, I didn't close something. That will make sure that as we're marching through this, it's not like we're going to be run into some kind of array error, index error, because we will have made sure that there is a list for every item in the row. So now we have a row. Now we can do that actual iteration and do the placement and the repositioning. So really, I think what we need here is enumerate. And the reason we want to do enumerate is because we're going to use the index to look position ourselves in the next spot. I think. Or maybe it's enumerate on this one. Yeah. Okay. Put it on the wrong one. We'll say I enumerate now. We'll make sure that we return transposed. And then we want to put we want to append the wagon into the index position of whatever's in transposed. So we could say transposed of I, and that will pick the right list to go in. And then we can say append the wagon. With any luck, not luck, we're thinking through this. That should be the prepper thing. Cool. That was right. So if we didn't do this, we would have gotten an index error. Let's try it again. I'm going to comment that out. Because our transpose doesn't have all of the initial list to add to. And there's no way to do, unlike default dictionary, I don't believe there's anything analogous to that. So you can't say, well, now that I say that out loud, is there a way to fill in a dictionary, or excuse me, fill in a list pre-populated with certain values? There probably is. Let's take a look for a moment before we move on and call this done. I bet there is. I bet there's something I'm missing that feels like it could do this, of quickly create a list of lists, but it's not coming to me right away. Let's look quickly. Nope. There's even just sort on the list methods. Okay, well, I'm satisfied with the implementation for now. Let's go check out some community solutions and see how we did. Actually, first, we've got our whole file. It seems to work. So I think we're ready to submit this. So we can say Exercism submit, and then we give it the Locomotive Engineer.py file. And now we can go check out and see that we've passed, hopefully. So we've got our test. There's no comments here about ways to improve it, so it means we passed through all their lint checking that they've got running. But let's take a look at a few community solutions to see if there's anything we can learn from them. We'll pull up Wiley Vicks here, and P Minehearts, and sure, Agent Candy. Why not? Okay, same solution. This person added optional type checking on this, which there was no requirement to do that, but good for them, I guess. And they use the star to get that in and then put that into a list. That's exactly what we did. All right, now we get to the fixed list of wagons. They have, okay, they came up with these more clever names. Good on you, Wiley. Car, caboose, the last one. We knew it was what it was going to be. Locomotive, I picked engine, and then they called it rest. Ah, I like this. They did, instead of doing a bunch of pluses, you can take the star and you can kind of do it in reverse to do the unpacking in the other direction. So that's a way to like essentially insert all the items into that spot. So that was clever. Good work. Okay, adding the missing stops. Whoa, that's cool. 4. I think this might be a newer syntax thing that I forgot about. Let's go to the built-in types. there it is. Okay. So that's cool. I totally forgot that this existed. So I did an update, but essentially you can do, starting from Python 3.9, you can do this syntax, which will do exactly what was needed. Where'd it go? Where'd their solution go? And they did a list. Aha. Wow. I don't know. I am curious. I think this was coincidental that this worked, because the test data probably had those stops ordered by how they were passed in with keyword arguments. So that was observant of them to notice that, because otherwise, yeah, there's a couple reasons why that is a bold assertion. Older versions of Python did not order their dictionaries, had no ordering guarantees. So we had a sorted on our version, right? And put that into stops as a list that way. And then this version just assumes that all of the values are going to be for the stops. And then they use the OR to essentially do an update of this dictionary. So I think what they could have done instead would have been, let's try it. Let's see, we could have done let's comment out that line and do this. I guess it returns, so what they did returns a new dictionary, but we could have done it like this perhaps, which is the stop order values. Would have done the same thing, I believe. Yeah. So that's, again, that's taking advantage of the fact that those stops were provided in the right sequence in the input data on the test. But I too took advantage of the knowledge of the test, knowing that there weren't more than 10 stops. So I'm going to keep my solution for what it was. I do feel it's like slightly more general, but that's my take on it. Okay. Extend route information, that's where I did the update, and this person used the pipe. Good on them. Ooh, that's fancy pants. So we did this stuff, and they did something not totally crazy, but not very obvious. So a zip will create, so the first thing that happens, this is a wagon rows. Wow, what did they do? A zip on the expanded wagon rows. What is that? So if the wagon rows are 3 rows worth of data, and those are 3 lists, and then you zip that, what is that going to do? And you map it to lists, so you create lists out of all of those, and then you do a list on them. Wow, that is, I don't even understand what that's doing off the top of my head. I'd have to like go step through that. But if that is a way to do that, kudos to them. Now, as far as like, is this implementation comprehensible if somebody else needed to follow it along in the future? I'd say no, but I don't know that mine's necessarily all that better. It's just kind of a quirky thing to do. All right, good job, Wiley Vic. That's some creative stuff going on there. Let's look at this next one. Same solution there. Same solution as Wiley Vic there. Again, better than mine. I used the plus. They used the splats. That's good. Oh, this is an interesting way to go. So they created this person created a new dictionary, and they unpacked the old dictionary into this new dictionary and put on the keys. That's a clever way to go do that. Cool. Same thing here, same concept. So rather than using the pipe, this does the same thing. And they did the same thing here. I wonder if this is like obvious to people. It's not obvious to me. So let's take a look for a second. What did they do? And what is this zip thing? So if you go into look at the built-in functions, and let's do it from here. Leave the built-in types there for later. But if you look at the standard library and you look at the built-in functions, there's this zip function. And zip takes an iterable like this and combines them together. So when your wagon rows, I'm curious, what will that do? Let's print the zip of this and see what it'll show. The key is that they've already unpacked this. So they get this long, I think it's like a long list of pairs, maybe? We'll probably have to do this so that it'll fail. Oh, boo. It's not showing us output from the print. They've got PyTest configured so that it won't show output somehow. Okay, I don't think it's worth our time digging too much into that. There's probably something really clever going on there that you're welcome to go inspect on your own time. But I'm not going to give it too much more. Maybe there might even be comments. Nope, no comments on solution. Okay. So Agent Candy here. They did like an unnecessary unpacking here. They could have just put a list around that, but otherwise it's the right solution for the input side. And then they did the better version for that. And then we saw the same way to do that with pminehart. This is looking like pminehart solution as well. Again, the zip thing. I don't know why that seemed obvious to these people. So they have a zip. So that's for sublist in zip. Okay. Good on them. I don't know how that is so obvious. What am I missing? Iterate over several iterables in parallel, producing tuples with an item for each one. Because the natural thing that zip does is it like combines these things together. Oh, I see. So by having those 3 lists, it essentially, I mean, you can view this as this become like if these were 2 lists stacked on top of each other, you can see that they kind of, the 1 and the sugar go together, 2 and the spice. But if you did it for all 3 of them, it would make you know, if there was a 3rd list that had 4, 5, and 6, it would be 1 sugar 4 would be the row here. And then they just had to put that into another list. Okay, that is clever. Good on them to all notice that. I did not. Cool. I think we're ready to call it quits though on that. Hopefully you learned something a little bit about unpacking along the way. I found it to be interesting. And our next one will be this last one on classes. There's something fun to do there. All right, let's switch gears. So we have got in the homeschool app, this is the project that we're going to work on. Last time I described this, I'll describe it briefly since this will be the first of the series that will get into this feature, is to what we're doing. What I build is a homeschool application, and it is meant to serve families that homeschool their kids, including my own. And it's a very simple application, and its big feature is making the scheduling easy to do. But I got a request from one of my members to have this extra ability to do to associate resources, essentially to associate books with a particular task that a student needs to complete. And this mom wanted to do this because it would enable her to quickly make a task and use a shorter name for it, and ideally have the resource name as part of the title of the task everywhere else. So let's take a look at this for a moment and actually get ourselves out of here and into our project area. Don't think I have anything to pull. Nope, I'm good. So I also want to open up our models diagram. Oh, I was wondering why my microphone was moving. My stand is falling off. You can give me a second. It's not very tight. I realize that's probably making a bunch of noise. Can I mute this quickly? All right, I'm going to drop this down, and hopefully it'll not be messed up when I come back. Okay, I don't know how long the setup's going to last this evening. My microphone stand is literally... I've got this thing mounted to a plastic table currently as a temporary table until I get something more permanent. And it doesn't hold super well to the table. And what I can't show you, I'd love to be able to like position a camera over here, is there is a grippy part to the actual thing that is attaching to the table, and it's literally sliding off that the glue is coming undone. So I gotta figure out how to get that to be a more permanent thing, and I might just be messing with that a bunch this evening. I can already feel it, like it's moving on me. That's not cool. Not gonna work. Hold on. Sorry for the technical challenge here this evening. Hopefully this will be okay. If not, I might just have to call it early this evening. We'll see how far we get. Okay, let's open up the models diagram for a moment and get oriented again. So here is the models that are associated with my system. And the model that we're going to be working on is down here in this corner. It's this course resource. So that's like a book or maybe some musical CD that you're doing as a part of a music study, or any kind of resource that they want. There's nothing really there. It's that you can see that it holds a title, and then there's a text field for whatever details they might want to put in there. For the purpose of what I'm going to use it for within the course of the application, I'm going to use the title. And the way this is going to work is I'm going to add to this model right here an optional, a nullable foreign key to a course resource. That's kind of step one. So by adding that nullable field, we'll then be able to deploy that with no changes, and all it will do, it should be a safe operation for the system for anything, for any existing tasks. So that's really important, as this isn't a live system. We don't want to take down the site, and I don't want to mess up anybody's data. So adding a new field, it either requires a data migration to update the data that's in there, but in this case, since it's going to be null and that's going to be an allowable state, it should be just fine. Postgres will have no problem adding a null field, because it will just put in the column and the data will be empty and it's all good. So at a design level, what's going to happen is we're going to need to then expose the ability to associate a task with a particular resource. And I don't know the best way to do that right now. There's a couple places where I have tasks, and the task form will need to be extended so that if there are any resources that are available, it's going to have to use like a drop down or something along those lines to say, I want to add this particular resource to this task. After that association is made, on the places that display the schedule, we can then take the title of a task, or I'm sorry, the, what do I call it here? The description, I guess. The description of the task and the title of the resource, and combine them together. So if you had a book and you had Tom Sawyer and the task was read chapter 1, then you'd have Tom Sawyer read chapter 1. And that way, the teacher, the educator who's putting together the schedule, will be able to create the resource once, attach a bunch of tasks to it, and then not have to copy the title around or do whatever they were going to do, whatever they're doing currently. That's the idea behind this. And I think this is going to hold. So far, so good. I moved it over, so hopefully it's just crushing a new spot of plastic on this plastic table. And then I got to come up with a better solution next time. Okay. So that's the core problem that we're trying to solve. Hopefully that makes sense of what we're going after. The sequence of this is I've got to get the data model in place first, and then we can move into places where we can add this data, or maybe we can work backwards. We probably maybe should be considering where this data is displayed first, because it's optional, and if it's not there, if it's an optional thing, we need to make sure that when it's in the off state still works and displays properly, and then when it is there, display the new thing. And since if we take that order, then from the Django admin, I can monkey around with some tasks and display them, but the users won't see that feature till it's ready. So this is not something that's necessarily going to require feature flags, because it's kind of it will just progressively appear when it's ready to go, unless the changes get more involved, in which case we can feature flag it. So I'm not even going to use a branch for like a long running branch. We'll just merge in pieces as they're ready, and they'll all go into this project for 6.12. So let's start with with getting our editor up and going. The virtual environment's already started there. Let's start the virtual environment here. Last week I also upgraded my Python version so it matches what I'm using on production. So now we're on 3.11. You can see that as I activated my virtual environment, it jumped from 3.10 to 3.11, which is also installed on my machine. So then we can open up NeoVim, And we can go to where the tasks are defined, which I believe is in the Courses app. There should be a course task down here. And we're going to extend this model now. So the course task is going to have a foreign key to the course, a course resource. And the course resource is defined down here. All right, so let's get the test set up. John, let me read your comment here. Yes, so trying to answer your question there, John. The course might have more than one resource, and a course certainly has more than one task. So it's like it's kind of a many-to-many setup, but a task is only ever going to be associated with one resource, but a resource can be associated with multiple tasks. So you could assign all of the tasks that are, you're reading the entire book of Tom Sawyer, chapters 1 through, 12. I don't know how many chapters are in that book. Then the right place to put the foreign key is on the task and not the resource, because it allows the one to be the resource and the many to be the task. Okay, so side by side, I will have up the course test models file. And we'll jump. Oh man, there's just a bunch of garbage in here from all of my typing stuff. There are errors all over the place. That just bugs me. Yuck. 626. That's not cool. That's not in all this file, but that is going to have to be cleaned up eventually. Oh, that's so sad. And some of that comes with, maybe we'll do a little bit of that cleanup now, because some of this comes with the factories. I use Factory Boy, which is a good library for generating factory instances of Django data, but they're not really well designed to work with typing information. So the reason that this is failing is the thing that this course task factory returns is an actual course task, but the typing system wants to think that the course task factory is returning a course task factory instance. So that's why it's confused about why there's no graded work, because the graded work is on the model and not on the factory. So I've fixed this up in a couple of other places. Let's see if we can knock that out really quickly, because this is gonna be tiresome if I'm looking at these errors all over the place. So we can start by having these. I think we did this in the students factories, maybe. Did we fix this here? We did. So I had to create this new factory class, which is a replacement for the Django factory that you see here. And it does some clever stuff with typing that is wacky, but necessary to make this work. And we're going to follow this pattern where we create a factory and we give it the thing that we're making a factory for. Now we have to keep the model here because that's information for Factory Boy. So this is for the typing stuff, and this is for the actual function of the factory system. And remember correctly, I don't actually, so let's look at the homeschool test file and see what the factory thing is doing. So the factory, oh, that was the other thing. We have to switch to using this create method. We can't just call it like this. We'd have to say .create to actually get the benefit. That was the other unfortunate side effect. The way this is called here with just using the constructor is the same as calling create functionally. It just is a little bit shorter syntax. Actually, once upon a time, used to use the create version all the time, and then switched to this because it seemed a little more natural. But here I'm getting bit by that, of using it that way. And the reason that it has to use create is because the typing system doesn't really play nicely with overriding the init method. So we can't override and call the super of init. This doesn't work well. I got all the details here if you want to go dig in my code later and figure out what happened. Okay, so next we can look at what? Let's go fix up another factory and look at the course factory and make it ready to do what we need to do. Maybe we already did. Oh, we did. Course task factory is already ready to go. Let's see if we correct that down here by just saying created or create. Will that work? It should. Why did that not work? Could be one of these things where it needs to come in and out of this file. 114. Nope. Well, that's annoying. Why didn't that work? All right, well, I'm going to sprinkle this in periodically because I do know that that's a solution. It could just be my editor is not going well. Phil, let me read your comment. If your course model has an M-to-M relationship with an image model, and when an admin goes to select existing images for a new course, how to let them see the images instead of scrolling a list of names? Well, my course model doesn't have any images, so I think you're asking. I had to refresh. Oh, good memory there, John. Mine doesn't have any images, so it's not. I guess it's a hypothetical for me, and really maybe more of a context that you have for your own project. Let me think on that for a second. If you're not talking specifically about the Django admin, I'm getting that. So I think what would happen in that scenario is the image model would use some kind of image field or a file field. You're working on a custom dashboard for an e-commerce site. Okay, makes sense. You can use an image field. And do I have one in? I don't think I have one in this project. Oops. I'm definitely not going to have one when I search for the wrong name. No. I think I have a file field though. Yeah. So image field is something that's available to you through Django. In order to use it, you have to install pill, which can be a bit of a pill. But it gives you some conveniences for checking for image types, like image data, if that's being uploaded. But by using that field type, then what you can do in your system is when you reference the field, you can do something like .url. So if you have a template, and actually maybe I even have an example. Yeah, Gaurav, you're pretty on track there. So, but let me see if I can find an example for Phil that gets him in the right ballpark. Yeah, here we go. So this isn't an image, but it is HTML, and you can hopefully translate this in your head to what it would be for your context. So I have a file field, and in which case this is a PDF, and I'm using Django storages. And Django storages will store, it's connected to, in my case, Amazon S3, but you can use other stuff too. And once you have all of that set up, then the file field or image field types will be accessible and work with the storage system. So when I do a URL here, what that's actually doing is replacing it with the Amazon S3 bucket location to actually populate this href attribute. In your context, Phil, you could do something similar with an image field, and the URL would be the path to the image that you presumably have stored on S3 or some location, or even if you've done it on and are keeping the images on your actual main machine where you're running your Django app. I don't know how you set up your file field storage. Then the URL can go get the proper location for that, and you can use an image tag with a source attribute and display it that way. So that's the way to go about that for this. And the key is knowing that when you have your model, so if you had my image model, I don't know, I'll call it book, and the image field I'll call image, and then you would do URL would be the way to get the actual URL out of the attribute. You're using the Django custom Django form rendering. I should write some custom. Yeah, I think that's right, Phil. Hopefully that was helpful. Okay, let's return to that test file. And John was telling me that I'm not going to see that change until I restart stuff. I believe you, John. That's annoying. Oh, maybe I did an LSP restart. Is that what I did? LSP? Well, this wasn't LSP. Oh, phooey. Forget you guys. It's annoying. Pyrite. It's not even pyrite. What is this? I'm sure that this is the right way to go. I'm not going to fret about it like too much. That's not really what we're after. So we know that we can, whatever test we write, we should do it with the create and it'll do the right thing for course task. Oh, you're welcome, Phil. Okay, so let's look at the course task class. And, ooh, we can fix the build though. So build is a way of doing, it's a way of building a factory instance without actually persisting it, so it's slightly faster than create. I don't even know why I used build here rather than just creating two. Maybe because I was wanting to check build. Like this is probably old code at this point. Let's see. When did I first do this? Yeah, this is some of my oldest code from 2020. It's getting pretty up there. Hey, how about that? It's a real project that's got years of effort behind it. So I will fix that really quickly. Sorry. I said I wasn't going to do it, and then here I am doing it. And oh, maybe that's why it didn't. Nope. Never mind. Get myself wrapped up. Where we need to go is not here, but homeschool test. And we want to take this and change this to build and build. That should take care of that spot. We'll just leave that alone. Keep the I think this is getting slowly lower on me over time. That's annoying. Still, I might have to move this yet again in a few minutes. We'll see. Okay, we need our factory, and we're going to assert that the task has a resource. How am I referring to this in other places? Am I referring to it as a course resource or just a resource? Resource? Whoa, why'd you bring up the quick fix? What happened there? I don't know that I'm referring to resources in a lot of places. Maybe the truth. So we kind of might be able to do whatever we want to do. Okay, let's do that. Let's just call it a resource. So we want to call this resource. And in the default state, it's going to be none. No shocker there. So if we run this test, that's going to fail because we haven't created this yet. So course task object has no attribute resource. All right, time to set this. So here we are in the course task model, and we will do a new thing of resource and do models, foreign key, and this is going to be, can I reference, this is, the model itself is lower in this file. Can I reference that, or should I just do, you know what, let's not. Let's use the string syntax. So courses, course resource as our string. Otherwise, you can put a model instance there if you had it, but that is a needless sequencing. I was just thinking about, like, can Python, you know, if I did the future annotations thing, would it be able to verify that, but that's not the case here because it's not an annotation. So do that, and then on delete. If so the on delete behavior tells you what happens if the thing on the other side gets deleted. So if the resource itself were deleted, what should we do to the task? And because there's a foreign key relationship here. In some fields, you absolutely like want to have, in fact, like here's an example. The course has to be there. A task has to be associated with a course. So there's no point in keeping around a task if the course itself is gone. So we say on delete, we want it to cascade. We want it to also affect the task. Sometimes this on delete field can be a little hard to wrap your brain around because you're actually thinking about the other thing that gets deleted. So it's not on delete of this thing, it's on delete of the foreign key, the other thing that you're pointing at. So in that scenario, we want the task to stay. We don't want, like, it would be better to continue to say, you know what, somebody deleted Tom Sawyer from their course, but they still have the task that says chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, because maybe their student did it and had a grade and they deleted the course, the book by accident. So we don't want to penalize them for that and have them lose information. So we're going to say on delete, and then we say models, and we have to tell it a behavior. And we're going to use the same behavior as for that grade level that you can see right above this. We want to set it to null. So that's going to be what we want for this. And here we want to have what do we want as the related name. I think if I remember correctly, related name of a plus basically means like don't put a related name on the other side, which is probably what we want. Like I don't know that we want to have the resource. Well, maybe we do. Maybe the course resource should know about every task that is related to it. That's not a bad thing. So let's, if we don't give it a related name, it would be something like course task set, and there'd be no space between it. So it's really not what we would like. It would be much nicer to give it a nice crisp name, and I want to call it tasks. So from this way, we could, what this does is it sets up the other side. So if we wanted to get all of the tasks that are associated with the resource, we could say course resource.tasks.all, and that would give us any task that happened to have this foreign key connection. That's what we're doing with that. All right, so next we want this to be nullable by default. So we're going to say null equals true. And then we want to be able to make sure that the admin is not going to have any validation problems or any, if we're doing any model validation, that there's any problems with that. So we want to say blank equals true as well. That's not about the database, but it's about how Django itself is going to behave in certain contexts using either the Django admin or some model forms that you might use. And let's finally give it some help text of an associated course resource. Pretty useless help string here, but for the sake of completeness. And there we go. So now we have our resource attached to a task. And at this point, the factory should pass, even though there's no migration yet. But from Django's point of view, it's assuming that the state of the world and the database tables will now have this new column. And so it's when we're running our tests, I don't even know if it shows in the settings here. I run the test without migrations. But if I go and I run my same tests with the full coverage setup here, this is the same thing that I run in CI, I believe. Maybe not. It might be something that's slightly different. No, this is the fast version, which probably also skips migrations. Make test. No, make. No, that's not going to be it. Make cover. Oh, shoot. What is it? There is a target I think I have, which will run these in a different setup. Deploy coverage. Yeah. Okay. make. Oh, it's coverage, not cover. So we can run this with coverage. And this is going to fail, or should fail, because what it's going to detect, and what I included in this output here is this -- migrations flag. And so this is a sanity check. I'm not even going to let that finish, because it's not worth it. It's a sanity check to say, have you made sure that your code has the necessary database migrations to pair with your code changes? So Django knows, based on your model definition, and it can check against the model state of if your migration set is matching your models. And so this would fail in my configured continuous integration system and give me this warning of like, hey, you're not actually ready to do this deployment yet. And if you deployed right now, you'd be in trouble because Django would assume that some columns are there and you'd have a bad time with your SQL statements. Because what would happen, let's talk through this. What would happen if the migration's not there for a new field? That might not seem like a problem because you might assume that, okay, when Django goes and gets information, it's going to get just the fields that I care about and have used. But that's actually not what happens. The ORM, when it goes to do a select on the database, it doesn't necessarily know what data you're going to use in that model instance that you're instantiating. So it has to do, you would think that it might do a select star and then just like wait until the attribute access to kind of fetch out that row piece. And that would work, but that's not what Django does. Instead, if you actually look at the SQL that gets executed, is it selects on the actual columns that are in the model. So it goes through all of those columns. In this case, it would have done something like select course task.resource, and that resource wouldn't be a column on the database table, and the database would blow up and say like, I don't have that. Actually, you can kind of see it here, no such column. So this is an example when it's trying to use the database for running, and so it doesn't have that column available, so it can't actually produce the right SQL statements, so it throws an operational error. And that's what you would get on your live site, and all of your users would be having a bad day. So having this migrations flag is a very useful thing to check. The reason I don't run it all the time is because it does slow things down some, especially as a project gets larger and there are more migrations over time. There's more stuff to apply. Because essentially what this thing is doing is building up the actual final state of after all of your migrations are applied. So that's a little bit of context there. So our test passed locally because it's running without that thing, but we need to make sure that we actually have a migration. So let's make a migration. So we do manage pi, and we can say make migrations. And now we have this new migration 6. And we can go check that out. I think, with any luck, I believe the Django recently made some changes with how they generate migrations, that they are formatted in a format that is happy to work with Black, the formatter, which is the formatting tool that I use. So maybe there's nothing required here. Maybe there is, though. Whoops, that's not what I meant to do. I meant to write it. That doesn't seem right. This is too long. Black should be formatting this thing to be much taller. And why is my own Black formatter not running? What's going on? I'm suspect of that. Let's try committing it and see a pre-commit. All right, so pre-commit caught it. Let's see what it caught. So it fixed the migration. I really thought Black was going to be set up to do that. Maybe there's a feature that I have to put in there. Or maybe it has to do it when it detects Black. Do I not have Black installed in my virtual environment? Aha, there, that's the problem. Probably. Is that Black is not installed here. So I need to install my developer tools, which is probably why my auto formatter didn't work over here. I'm going to actually save this with the unformatted version. And then I'm going to do a pip install on my my actual developer tools. What? I don't believe that for a second. Where is black? Oh, Well, what's going on? I have black installed through Mason. Well, that's weird. It said I was doing formatting that time. You're lying. You're not actually doing formatting. I don't understand. Somehow my formatter is not working. Sorry, digression here. LSBIM, LSP buff format. This should be calling every time I write. Right before it writes, it should be calling this format command, which should be doing the call to black. That should be happening. Something isn't right. I have black configured for Python right here with null ls. All this stuff, it seems right. Well, okay. Let's see if we can find out what's going on. So there are, yeah, good question, John. Is black installed locally? It does seem like it was. So that's what I was checking on with Mason. So Mason is this tool that goes and gets all of my necessary tools. And so it should be installed inside of my NeoVim context here. And it's not telling me the installed version, but this should be there. So I should be able to depend on that. I don't know where it is. I could probably find it in the NeoVim directory. Not really sure what's going on. That's weird. Because it's definitely used here. I've definitely had it working in the past. So now I'm puzzled. LSP info. So let's see. Yeah, so it's not going to be in my virtual environment, but it should be inside of the context inside of which NeoVim runs. It should have its own version of black available. So we've got the client here, which is detecting one active client not attached as buffer. All right, hold on. Let me get out of my vimrc and actually back onto a Python file. We're in a proper buffer now, and let's see what it says. So LSP info is telling us, and in case you've not encountered LSP before, I guess I should make some comments. So LSP, what is that? It's the language server protocol, and it's the way to get it's the way to get your editor to do a variety of things, and have syntax, not syntax highlighting, but syntax awareness or language awareness. So if you know where to find standard library things or how to jump to different definitions of methods and such like that. And so I've got this null ls. Null ls is a way to tap into the language server protocol that's available, and it's a plugin that kind of exists on the other side. So Pyrite is the normal plugin. Pyrite is the normal plugin for doing all of the fancy go-to definition detection for Python, and we want to use it for that kind of stuff. and it's running at this language server thing. But null.ls kind of fits in this like little space in between of like what happens if you want to have certain tools that run for a particular programming language, and maybe aren't designed for themselves to be a language server. So null.ls is a NeoVim package that kind of sits in between, that is meant to be a shim that allows you to hook into whatever you needed to do. And what I was showing in my RC file is that I have null.ls configured to have black as one of its available tools. And that's why you can see the command listed in LSP is not actually an executable, a Pyrite language server, but it's a function. It's a Lua function. And so it should be delegating to this. So I don't know how to get more info out of null.ls about what it's currently doing. Maybe there's a null. Oh, hey, how about that? What is it saying? Okay, so it's telling me it thinks that black is an active source that it can use for formatting. All right. Then why didn't you run? So the way this should be working is when I hit save, because of the config that I had up there, it should be calling the format method. And if the format method is handled by null.ls, then it should pass it off to black, and black should be able to do that work. So that's all confusing to me because I'm hitting save. It's really hard to see. So here's my mouse cursor, follow this. There's a very light gray thing here. So pay attention to this area while I hit save again, and let's see if you can see it. It will very quickly, it said completed 100% and formatting. And it is clearly not formatting. So that's not cool. I am going to attempt to install black here and see if that will magically make this better. It should be using black from the Mason install, but it doesn't seem to be doing that. And I'm wondering if it's like not playing nicely. Let's do one more thing. There was a null ls log. Oh, wait, when is this? This is March 22nd. So these are old things. These are not valid things in the log. All right, so don't trust that. Ah, sad. Okay. Pip install black. Now we have black installed. And I gotta quit out of here. See if that migration still yeah, it's still wrong. Let's open up NeoVim again. Go to courses, migrations 6, and try and save again. What the heck, black? Not cool. Okay, well, I will figure that problem out later. For now, we're going to rely on pre-commit, which can do the black formatting for us. The two-step thing, that's not awesome. But you can see here's the migration. And you can see what it does. In case you haven't done much with Django migrations, you can also see, so my migration, if we look at it, is just a Python file, right? There's nothing magical in here. Well, there's a lot of magical stuff in here, but it's brilliant work that's done by other people in these add fields and all of this migration stuff. So there is essentially a set of, it's almost like a domain-specific language that's been added here that you don't have to worry about, but it's all the details that Django needs in order to generate the necessary database code. That code has a name. It's called DDL, and let's look that up. So there's like different types of database query or syntax code. So database DDL. It stands for the Data Definition Language. And I don't know why this is probably useless information for you to really know. It doesn't really matter. But essentially, whenever you do a create or a drop or anything that's modifying the database itself, so the actual mutation of the database metadata, table modifications, column additions, all of that sort of stuff, that is considered DDL. Conversely, I think the actual queries is what's considered SQL. So even though, like from a Postgres point of view or a SQLite point of view, they all kind of look like similar in their structure, they're technically different things. And that actually, in fact, it says it right here. These statements can be freely mixed with other SQL statements, making the DDL not a separate language. So it's kind of like a subset. It's a way to talk about specific types of operations within Postgres stuff, or within database stuff, excuse me. So what you can do, there's actually a cool database command, or a Django command, that you can do. SQL migrate is the command name, and I believe it takes a path, or it also takes an app label. So we can do manage SQL migrate, and we can say courses. We should just be able to say 0006, I think. I don't know if it would give it. Yeah, cool. So here is the actual database commands that Django, when you run migrate and it runs this migration, this is the stuff that it generates and is prepared to send to your database. Now, in this case, this is, if you look closely, this is not Postgres. And the reason it's not Postgres is because in my local setup, when I'm doing development, I'm actually working against a SQLite database. So this is actually in the SQLite format. If I had a Postgres configuration, you can get out the equivalent Postgres syntax. And that's actually some of the beauty of Django in this way. It's like the migrations are meant to abstract away and think about relational database data state and not care about which database you're using. So whether you configure to run SQLite or Postgres or MySQL or, heaven forbid, Oracle, all of those things can be generated here to give you the appropriate syntax for that database dialect, which is a pretty cool aspect of Django. So now we have database migration. Let's run the full coverage thing, make sure everything's working right. It should pass this time. This runs a little bit slower, like I said, because it's actually running with migrations. Do I run black with defaults? Yes, John, I do. I have, so the company I work at has Python services, and they have turned on, because of the long legacy of it, have turned on the setting to allow either quote style. Frankly, that just gets annoying. Like, my personal preference, and this is one of those funny scenarios where my personal preference is actually for single quotes. That's how I grew up learning Python, and it just feels a little nicer to me. And I never really bought the argument that two single quotes by themselves can look like a one double quote, and that's why people prefer double quotes over over single quotes. That one doesn't fly for me. Like, maybe my visual acuity is enough that that's not really an issue for me. So my preference is for single quotes, but I have found it better in my experience with other developers to go with the defaults and just accept it for what it is. So double quotes it is for me. The other thing that my company does is change the max line length. I try to keep it to 88 because why? It's just like an arbitrary choice. So that's what my take on that. All right, so what are we left with after this? We've got our migration. We've got our new foreign key. This should be safe to run on my database. And we made the test update. Should we add one more test? Maybe we should. So let's go into the course test models file. And Now, like I said, these were some pretty old tests, so I'm not even convinced that I really need this anymore. Like a lot of my newer things, like if I look at these, if I truly look at these things, I'm not convinced that I care about what they're testing about. Some of these are, but some of them are just like, do you have the attribute? And that feels, frankly, kind of excessive. So with more recent models, it's been more like, do you have a factory, and does the factory have stuff? So I don't know that I feel necessary to have like a test like has course. So I was testing the attributes one at a time, and I'm trying to think of what's a more recent model that I could consider. PDF. Is there any report models? Report model? Maybe. This is certainly yeah, the bundle is a newer thing. So let's take a look at the report test models and see what I did on that one. Yeah. You can see, like, I care about much less now. I don't even care about calling it a fact. I'm not testing the factory, I'm testing an instance. And this is just a way of asserting and really declaring in one go, here are all the attributes of it, and here's like the default state that happens on those things. So this is a lot more of what my current tests look like. And if I did it again, I'd come back, or I could even come back and kind of clean these up and say, like, this is really offering little to no value. I'm bummed though that that's still complaining even after we restarted this thing. Okay, we didn't do this. Well, look at that. Now the thing is working. What? It was not working last time, but what? But this one's not? I don't get it. I don't get it, y'all. Add create on this. Now that's even more puzzling. Check that out. Look, this thing, these tests are almost identical. What am I missing? Course task factory.create, graded work. Task graded work. Course task factory. Create graded level. Grade level. Oh, maybe graded work is some other, maybe that's a one-to-one field or something else. Could be a different type of scenario. All right, I'm not going to fret too much about that. Just not worth it. So I think that's where I want to stop for this evening. Let's just stop there at the model updates. I will make sure this is all working. Actually, one more thing. I'm going to run MyPy against it to make sure there's no MyPy errors that are being new and detected. And then we'll declare victory. I think it should be fine. Oh, nope. Spoke too soon. Couldn't resolve related manager for relation tasks. Couldn't resolve related. What? Django manager missing. All right, let's go fix it before I commit this, because this is actually an area that I do try and be careful, because if you mess up migrations, then you're going to have to create more migrations afterwards, and it just gets fuzzy or not fun. So let's look at the model, and this could be just a thing that I need to ignore because it's being dumb. Related name, tasks. It's on the course resource. Course resource is using a standard manager, which I think was this kind of problem. Django manager missing. Couldn't resolve related manager or relation tasks. Okay. let's search for this. Because I think I've seen this in other stuff, and I think there was nothing I could do about it. Look at a couple things in here. Yep, django-stubs. Couldn't resolve related manager for relation. Related name. I think I encountered this recently for another scenario that was very similar. Should have no problem. I agree. There's nothing wrong with what I did. As far as I know. I'm not even doing a fancy manager here, so that's even more puzzling. Let me look at the message one more time. Homeschool, so it's at the, this is at the course task model. Why is it doing another .courses.course-task.resource? That, probably because I specified it as a string. So it's doing an extra, so that's like the model lookup that it's trying to do. No, that can't be right. I should have said course resource. Did I mess that up? Maybe I messed it up. No, it's course resource. So that message seems wrong. Course task, courses, course task. That is weird. Yeah, they're seeing the same behavior. Bar is not bar. But it will be fine if I change the bar model into something like foo.foo. Well, that's a different app. All right, it seems like an unsolved problem. It's kind of annoying. You know, I'm getting more to the point where I'm like, is django-stubs worth it? I don't know. I have actually, I've not been, it's not really flagged anything that I've cared about. And if anything, it's just caused me grief. So maybe I actually want to back some stuff out here and say it's just not ready for prime time, or maybe it will never be ready for prime time. Django was not designed with typing in mind, and I don't know, maybe it's just not there. So what would happen if I take that out? This probably would, my life would probably just get a lot easier. I think I'm okay with that. I was hoping that it would be something that would be, that I could like, that I could apply, get some benefit out of, and not have a lot to do, but it's just created a bunch of headache for me. So I think what I want to do is take it out. So I'm going to commit this, but before I push it, so this is where I don't want to modify history yet. I'm going to commit. I know that MyPy is going to be broken, so what we'll do is take that out, make MyPy work again, clean up, and then, you know, you can try on your own projects django-stubs if you want. I guess for me, I guess I'm just concluding that it's not worth the headache, and I've been doing fine for years without it, so I'm okay with letting it be there. And this is not a knock, just to be clear, really clear. Like, this is not a knock on anybody who's trying to use and improve django-stubs. I respect what they're doing. I'm just not ready to have that kind of stuff. And I think it will also have the benefit of all of that, all of those errors that I've been seeing about Factory Boy. All of that will go away because it won't be checking that stuff anymore. It leaves me a little bit more open to type errors, I suppose, but I just don't. I've not been seeing the value out of that. And I don't think that the type errors that I've added are going to start failing, so I think that's going to be okay. Maybe they will fail. We'll see. All right, so let's go to the requirements dot what? Dev? Yeah. We're going to take this out, and I think this is where the annoying part about this is, like, the only way to get rid of this is to actually remove it. I think I have to uninstall it in order to make this work right, because otherwise it's automatically registering itself. So pip uninstall, which is not something I do often, django-stubs. Yes. Let's see what it's getting rid of, just out of curiosity. It's getting rid of a ton of PYI files. Those are our type hints, essentially, that then can be used by MyPy. And it's just a massive number of them. I just don't think they're there yet. Oh, and then there's also this MyPy Django plugin. So there might be a little bit more that we have to do. I'll search for that in a minute. MyPy. Pi project? Where is this? Django-stubs. And take out the plugin. Yeah, here it is. Add django-stubs. Let's see what's in here. So we got the Pi project toml, the requirements. All right, let's look at this div for a minute. What? What's going on? There should be more to that diff. Oh, I maybe had to do a rebase. Crap. All right, forget it. What was I saying? Lost my train of thought. I think it was just this, there's the addition of this small amount of configuration here. And then, so now we should be able to go make MyPy. And with any luck, it will pass because that check that was there before is now no longer there. And it did. So it probably also made MyPy faster too, because there's less to check, because anytime it hits an any, which is effectively what all those Django things would have been, then it's just going to skip right over them. All right, the problem is we've got this crappy cleanup to do now. I create a problem for myself with this. I've got this other issue that is about all these MyPy errors. So 762. So now I did a bunch of work, and I did it on stream too, so y'all saw me fix some of these things, which is fine. Some of them were type checks that were accurate, but still annoying. All right, so let's see. I'm going to, oh, wait. Did I not commit the migration? All right, one thing at a time. Let's commit the migration. So add migration of, no, don't talk about, it's not in the context of the migration. What are we really doing? We're adding nullable course resource to course task model. That's what we're really doing. Don't talk about the activity, talk about the thing that you're trying to accomplish. Okay. So now we got these two changes, which removes django-stubs. So let's put those in the stage. And then I'm gonna make a bulk edit here and see if it comes out okay. So we have a bunch of these things that look like this, which are space octothorpe type. So we should be able to search for that. Space octothorpe type. And I should do this. How many of them are there? Only 80. All right, so I'm just going to say I did capital D for delete to the end of the line, and now I'm going to do next, go to the next occurrence of that pattern, and just dot. And so I'm going to do, this is going to be boring, but I'm going to alternate N and dot. I could make a macro and probably do it a little faster, but it's probably just not worth it. So if I do a bunch of these, whoops, and then if I do it too much, then I delete the last line. That's the problem. So this will essentially take out all of these areas where I annotated all this stuff to say, I'm going to come back and fix this later. Sadly, I'm not, well, I guess to my benefit, I'm not going to come back and fix this later, but I'm doing this undo work now. And that last one, yep, okay. So what would you do if you wanted to do a macro? Is it worth showing that? No, I'm already 50% of the way through. Not worth a macro. Sorry, y'all. Maybe next time. The short version, if I were to do a macro, a trick that I was taught by a previous coworker of mine, is you record a macro. And macros in Vim are done, you use Q to start them, and then you put them in a letter or a register. And it's a sequence of keystrokes. That's all it is. So when you then execute the macro, you can do an execution of a macro using @ followed by the register that you used. So you can create a macro, and the way to make a macro that repeats would be to make your macro, and then at the end of your macro recording process, you call the macro, and then you stop recording. And the effect of that is that when you call it once, it's going to chain and call itself again and again and again and again. It's a pretty cool little trick. All right, but instead, what I've done here is I have a plugin for my Vim setup called Quick Fix Reflector. And what Quick Fix Reflector does is allows my quick fix, which is this bottom area, to, I can make bulk changes in there. So I could do all that, and then I can save, and it will save all of these files at once, which is not something that you can normally do in Vim. The buffer doesn't really allow that. It's usually read-only. I'm going to hit save, and it should be writing through all of them, and it appears like it did. All right, so other ways that I could have done this. Let's undo a couple of them. See if there would have been another option. So I'm going to highlight this line. So what I would have done is highlight all of the lines that appear to have this type ignore, which in this case for the search I could have done from top to bottom, even though there's some SVGs in here. I'm not sure why those showed up in the search. So ignore. Let's go to these, just these two. And so I would highlight all the relevant lines, and I can then do colon, and a colon brings up, see this like weird angle bracket syntax in the corner of my editor? It's showing me that whatever change I'm about to apply is going to affect the lines that are visually highlighted right now. So I'm going to do a substitution, and I'm currently highlighting ignore, but I want to do a substitution on space, dollar type. Can I go to the end? Will that work? No. See, this is where I was thinking it wasn't going to do what I needed it to do. If I knew the whole pattern, well, maybe I can do dot star. Ooh, there it is. So dot star is going to go to the end, and then I could do slash and do, see how it kind of disappeared in the preview? If I wanted to have it all be ASDF, I could type that there. But if I don't, I could have done a closing slash, and then I want that to apply globally to all the selections. If I only applied it, like if I did it this way and then just like that, it would only apply it to the first one, I think. Although it seems to preview that it would do it to both. I'm going to try it without that. Oh, it did it to both. Interesting. So that would have been a faster way to correct this. But y'all got to see me do it the boring, slow way. Substitute. Let's do it now because I can't seem to get rid of that stuff. Type star. Boom. Okay. Now this is another boring part because I have to review this diff, make sure that I'm not deleting stuff accidentally. Then I'll run the test, give myself a sanity check. But this should all be exactly what I did, just going through, deleting everything at the end of the line. In this process, I have a feeling that black will come back and reformat some of these things. Maybe things that were previously wrapping no longer need to be wrapping because they don't have this comment. Like you can see some of these have no QA on them. It means the line was too long previously. So we're kind of returning it to a state where it's going to have a much shorter line. Like this, I suspect, will go to one line, for example. Maybe not, but you never know. Just scanning through these. I'm just going to quickly use them. It's a bunch of information, but it's the same. There's time enough between each of these diff spots to see, okay, there's nothing different there. Very visually, pretty easy thing to catch. I want to make sure I just didn't one or two of those times I actually over deleted and hit the same line twice. What I was doing was deleting the last line or the last character of the line, which is an extra delete. I think I undid all that, but I just want to check. There's the end. Okay, so that all seems good. Let's run the test suite, make sure it's all good. And then I'll run MyPy again, which should also be good because stubs is gone. It's all good as well. And this black had nothing to do either. All right. So remove django-stubs. Sorry, not for me. Okay. A little extra time there. So what are we going to do next time? Next time we will do another Python exercise at the rate. So I had been hoping to record some of these separately for Exercism stuff for Python, but I've not been having time for that. So presumably that means you all will get to see the next one, which is an exercise on doing classes in Python and see what kind of stuff they want to teach us there. And then we will get back to this project. And now that the database has the necessary migration, which I guess we can go ahead and apply local here. So we're done with that part. So now that we have that new column, we can start to display that in different places. And that should be safe to do because the data is empty. So we have to make it safe in the empty case and then show the appropriate thing when there is data. We want to start from that space where nobody has the data right now, because that's the case. Get the display set up in there, and then we will mess with the admin to connect a couple of tasks to a resource. And there's a few things that we want to do at that point. We want to make sure does the look of what we're trying to produce look right? If we're using the title, I think it will have no problem doing that. And then also, I'm concerned with performance. There's some places where these are fetching a bunch of tasks in a kind of a loop. It's not the best code. And what I don't want to have happen is, have a bunch of things that is rendering each task and then not be fetching the resource. And so doing extra queries for resources too. So we need to make sure that we prefetch all of the resources in some of these views as well to make sure that our views for this application stay performant enough. So that's going to be the big part of that. And that will probably be what the next stream is about. After that stream, we'll be able to go back in and actually expose this as a feature to the places where you can edit these tasks so that the users will be able to do this themselves and add their own data. At that point, the feature should be wrapped up. And then I can make a blog announcement and let my users know that this is now available. So that's the plan. This should probably take another 2 or 3 streams to complete, since we have the Exercism stuff paired with the stream now as well. Thanks for joining in tonight. Appreciate all your questions. This was a good conversation. And I will see you next time, and hopefully we'll have my microphone fixed so I'm not fiddling with stuff again. Anyway, take care. Good night.